get to know each weapon archetype and get to know the feel for it. And that's my recommendation for people, because you might be surprised by the weapon that you end up liking the best.
Let's talk multiplayer, because at the end of the day, that is something Call of Duty is known for. And yet it's not something really that we think of with mobile games. You know, when we first started to get these, very high level polished mobile games, they were kind of single player experiences. You know, they did not include hundreds of players at one time. And yet that's such an important part of the COD experience. So how did you translate that? What was key for you in making that multiplayer COD multiplayer?
Honestly, the MP, we kind of internally call it MP, which is like the suite of like 5-on-5 modes predominantly. There's some other, we have 2v2 gunfight and some other modes that are also kind of at that same level of like intensity. That's where we started. I mean, that was the thing that we wanted to get right. And it is what people think of when they go back to the annals of time, like their favorite Call of Duty game. It was those moments playing MP with their friends and their rivals that they remember the most. And so that was our top priority. We had MP up and running and sort of getting that to fun before any UI was anywhere near presentable, before any other modes that you might have seen in the game were even stood up. And it continues to be the thing that we hammer on the most. If you play any other games in the space, Call of Duty Mobile is very unique in offering this type of gameplay at such a level of quality. So we are proud of that, and we also feel like it's a responsibility to make sure we keep it that way and keep it tight and fresh at all times. So that's where we started, and the control is really kind of touches on controls, because MP is so frenetic, to use that word again, and visceral, that the controls just have to be super tight. And that forced a lot of decisions, I think, early on focusing on control and so forth. And the gunplay, everything kind of interacts with that. But one advantage we have, I think, is that so many of the maps were sort of battle tested by previous Call of Duty players and previous Call of Duty games, that we were able to just adapt them slightly to mobile to make sure the performance was there, to make sure that the frame rate, the responsiveness, the flow, everything was just right. But it's largely what you would see if you were firing up the same map on a big screen.
And so obviously, can you talk a little bit more about controls? Because this is the bit that I think for me, I was really excited about, because I really struggled to imagine just how that was going to play out, because that kind of twitch heavy gunplay is so much part of Call of Duty that I just couldn't imagine how I was going to do it on a screen, how it was going to feel with a finger. And as you said, you have managed to capture that, I'm saying it again, frenetic feel. So where did you start with that? Where do you begin creating a whole new control system for such an established game?
Well, there are many, many control schemes on the cutting room floor that were tried, and I think it's sort of a process of elimination, married with some things that were sort of standards that we're starting to develop. I mean, some of the core aspects of the controls have been around for a while, and it feels like the audiences have really kind of evolved in their tastes and willingness to try certain things, right? So, dual stick is even a question mark, 4 years ago, whether people would want to play a dual stick shooter. But we were able to kind of hear what people liked and didn't like about those experiences in other games, and then start to refine it for Call of Duty Mobile. Fortunately, we have over a decade of experience at the company on lots of little tricks and things you can do behind the scenes to get that feel right on using other control systems, and we were able to kind of apply that to Call of Duty Mobile. And ultimately, we ended up deciding on 2 different primary control systems in the game, because it's just such a personal, intimate taste thing that it's really not one size fits all. And so we have sort of our sort of basic control scheme that handles some things a bit more automated way, but it also has some disadvantages. So I think when people play it at first, like, oh wow, I can kind of auto fire with this, so I'm just going to wreck everybody. But the people who really know what they're doing can play in the pros controls, and they know how to lead a target, and they can do some things that auto firing won't let you do. So I think the best players will actually use the more advanced control scheme. But then from there, there's almost like a third level, which is you can absolutely configure the controls in 100 different ways. And so there, we have our kind of two main control schemes that are what most people use, frankly. But if you really like this button over here, you really like the fire that way, that those customizations are available to you. And that's, again, another Call of Duty kind of classic element, is to put configurability in the player's hands so that they can play the way they want to play, but do it in a way that's fair when they're engaging with the rest of the community. So I think, for us, it was a combination of heritage of the franchise, learning some of these tricks on how to unlock really great control, and being able to adapt that to mobile through a lot of iteration, a lot of play testing, and then providing these two different entry points so people can onboard easily. And a lot of people stick with that, with those controls, or go into the advanced mode when they want to, get a little bit more clever in how they play.
Well, if we're talking advanced modes, if we're talking those pro controls, esports, because that Call of Duty, if you grew up with Call of Duty, you grew up with Call of Duty esports. So how have you integrated that into this newest version of COD?
Yeah, so the Call of Duty Mobile World Championship presented by Sony Aspera is happening now. It's got a $1 million prize pool. For us, we see this as a super exciting way to sort of unlock the inner competitor in all of our players. They're already competing every time they play the game. They're just not competing for a prize, right? So by providing this structure for people, and it's a really cool structure where there's qualifying, sort of our first stage is qualifying. So we have solo qualifications, then you get into team qualifiers, and eventually into regional qualifiers. So there's multiple ways to get into the qualifying. And then you move into our championships, which will be toward the end of the year. But right now we're sort of at the end of our first set of regional qualifiers and the beginning of our second set of solo qualifiers. And anyone can actually qualify. All you have to do is fire up the game and play in our ranked mode. So we've had ranked mode since the very beginning. And, ranked mode is very special. We set the rules for it. It's a level playing field for everyone. It's our most competitive way to play. But now you can actually aspire to and qualify for getting into our world championship just by playing the ranked mode the normal way. And we're getting a ton of great feedback from players. We've had a lot of people signing up. So we're really excited by it. And it's also a learning experience for us, because we want to see kind of how players react to this, because it's ingrained inside the game. It's not something you go, and play somewhere else. It's all basically built off of our internal ranked mode. So that's continuing. It started at the end of April, and will continue the final phases where we get into the postseason will start in end of September, early October. So people can fire up right now, fire up the game and still get in on the solo qualifiers. And if you're score enough points in ranked mode, you can form a team and then get onto the team qualifiers and eventually regional. So it's very cool. We're excited to just see how players engage with it. And we also are offering prizes for engaging in it as well. And there'll be more about that later. There's obviously the $1 million purse, but we're offering other ways to engage and earn prizes through the World Championship. So more on that. Fire up the game and you can see how it all works today.
So how does it feel to see, people professionally competing in essentially this brand new version of your game? Is it exciting to realize that people have taken to it the way that they have?
Oh, we get a big thrill out of just watching the content that gets created around this. So, the people who are the elite competitors like to show people they're elite competitors. And so I personally enjoy watching the trick shots and some of the things that they can pull off, because it's just, I consider myself okay player, but when I see them, it's just, it's inspiring. So to watch the level of competition is pretty cool. And I think people have found themselves in the regional qualifiers that maybe never thought of themselves ever as an esports athlete. But because we've integrated into the game, and it's just, what do you got to lose? Just go ahead and sign up and start playing in ranked mode. And I know people every day are like, man, I'm level 150. I smoke every time in the seasons. I think I'm pretty good. I'm like, well, then try it, and then they're doing quite well. So I just like that, like unlocking that competitive spirit in our players and trying to reinforce it, give it a bit more authenticity, and is pretty cool. And so we're not done yet, though. We'll see how the rest of the season goes, and I'll keep watching.
So what tips do you have? I mean, not for me, I'm definitely one of those pro level players, but if you've got people who, as you said, kind of signed up at that entry level point where you are just kind of using auto aim, you are auto shoot, what do you need to be doing to get better? What are the kind of customization tips and tricks that are going to help you level up your play in COD Mobile?
Yeah, I think the main thing is just to keep playing the core loop of the game. So in COD Mobile, and I would try ranked play, because ranked play takes a lot of the decisions. We make the decisions for you, like the maps and things like that are already decided, and you'll get a good representation and get to know a lot of maps that way. But the core loop is really like you're playing, you're choosing your weapon, and then by playing with that weapon, you're leveling it up, and that unlocks more attachments to it. Everyone can do that. It's just a grind to unlock those things. So it's pretty cool. All you have to do is put in some hours. Next thing you know, you've got all these different attachments to choose from, and figure out for each weapon, what's your personal play style. So some people like to get a scope on there and go long range, and other people will take the same weapon and prefer to just use a laser sight and for really quick attacks. So you can configure your weapon a little bit, almost like that's your character in a way. And just get to know each weapon archetype and get to know the feel for it. And that's my recommendation for people, because you might be surprised by the weapon that you end up liking the best. And we have so many different weapons in the game that you can go through that progression, and you can level up each one of those weapons, unlock the cool things. And we have some really neat new features coming online for weapon progression that I won't kind of get into details here, but if you can get familiar with how our weapon leveling works, which is essentially unlocking cool attachments, we're continuing to invest in that weapon fantasy, and players tell us that this is pretty much the thing that they care about the most in the game, is like how the weapon feels for them and having that capability to tweak it and control it. The only like reco I would have is like keep experimenting around with the controls, because eventually you're going to want to try the pro controls and do things like leading targets and things, and you can also manage your ammo more efficiently if you're playing that way. So those are just some of my tips, but main thing is just rack up some time in the game, and you'll get a feel for it quickly.
I love that. I have to say, one of the things that really surprised me was just how different the weapons would feel. Because again, that was something I wasn't hugely expecting on mobile, was to really feel a definite sense of, the different weaponry. So I absolutely love that, as you said, you do get a feel for what's going to work best with your playstyle. That's my favorite thing. I absolutely love, carefully picking my loadout.
And then certain maps, right? In certain maps, also, you might change your loadout, because the cool thing is, depending on the map, you will probably have a very different loadout, and over time you unlock those. That's part of the player progression, is you unlock additional loadouts, and you can just stack those up with different perks and with different abilities, and there's a lot of different ways you can configure yourself, and of course cosmetics. But at the end of the day, it's all about that weapon and how you've tricked it out and what types of attachments you put on it.